Luna stared at the cryptic message displayed on her comms device. The fragmented data was distorted, but the distress was clear. Luna, black cube, anomaly, convergence. It was from Dr. Nadia Laurent, an old colleague who had been stationed at the Convergence Observatory, a remote research facility located at the outermost edge of known space. The convergence was infamous, a zone where space itself behaved unpredictably due to intense dark matter fields. The physicists there had been studying the substance, hoping to unlock its potential for multiverse exploration. But now, something had gone wrong. As Luna traveled to the observatory, she reviewed the data on dark matter. It was the invisible framework of the universe, comprising 85% of all matter, yet it interacted only through gravity. Experiments with dark matter had always bordered on theoretical, until the Convergence team's discovery of the Black Cube. The cube was unlike anything seen before, a perfect obsidian artifact that defied all known laws of physics. No mass, no volume, yet it exerted gravitational effects. Luna had heard of objects like this in theoretical physics, higher dimensional entities compressed into forms perceivable in our universe, similar to how a tesseract represents a four-dimensional shape in 3 dimensions. Her shuttle docked at the Convergence, and as she disembarked, she felt it. The subtle wrongness in the air. The walls of the facility seemed to bend at impossible angles, and strange time distortions created a disorienting effect. The cube had destabilized something fundamental. The air hummed with an eerie static, a faint charge that made the hairs on her arms stand up. Luna's gaze was drawn to the distant horizon, where the stars themselves flickered erratically, like old bulbs on the verge of burning out. The observatory, bathed in the faint glow of distant nebulae, looked like an island adrift in the sea of a broken cosmos. Somewhere in the vastness of the Convergence, the rules that governed reality were fraying, and Luna had the unnerving feeling that her arrival had been long anticipated, as if the cube itself had beckoned her. Dr. Laurent's office was in disarray. Data pads, research notes, and holographic projectors were scattered across the floor. Luna found the last recorded log. The cube wasn't found, it appeared. During one of our dark matter particle accelerations, it just manifested. We believe it's an object from an alternate dimension, a higher dimensional entity compressed into our space. Its gravitational signature fluctuates with no pattern. We thought we could control it, study it. The log ended abruptly. The team had hypothesized that the cube manipulated dark matter on a quantum level, creating a bridge to other universes. But it wasn't just a tool, it was sentient, feeding on the energy produced by the collisions between dimensions. As Luna read through the research, the cube pulsed again. This time, she felt a deep vibration, resonating with her own body as though it was reaching out. The room around her flickered, and suddenly she wasn't in the observatory anymore. She was in a lush green forest under twin suns. The scent of fresh air filled her lungs, and for a moment, she believed she had been transported to another world. But in the blink of an eye, she was back, surrounded by the cold metal walls of the observatory. The data on the cube stretched back months, a chaotic mess of incomplete equations, fragmented gravitational models, and broken quantum algorithms. Nothing fit. The more they studied it, the more the laws of the universe seemed to warp in its presence. Luna's eyes scanned over a particular set of notes that described an anomaly, a specific moment when the cube's mass had inexplicably tripled, pulling nearby objects toward it as if it were a micro black hole. And yet, a second later, the readings normalized. It was as if the cube was testing the boundaries of its existence, flexing its gravitational pull just enough to remind those who studied it of its incomprehensible power. Luna's mind raced. The cube wasn't merely opening portals, it was collapsing the boundaries between realities. Each pulse destabilized the fabric of space-time, causing alternate realities to bleed into their own. She checked the facility's logs. Several staff members had reported seeing impossible versions of themselves, twisted shadows of their own existence. alternate versions of the same person, caught mid-transition between dimensions. As Luna explored the facility, she too began to see them, flickering versions of herself. One version stood in a clean, sterile laboratory, working with the cube in some sort of alliance. Another Luna, dressed in a strange military uniform, stood in a battlefield, surrounded by high-tech weaponry. And then there was a third, a Luna in a peaceful, rural setting, far away from the chaos of the Convergence. But it was the fourth vision that stopped her in her tracks. She saw herself at the heart of an intact observatory, holding the cube in her hands, perfectly in control of its power. This version of herself seemed to know what was happening. She mouthed two words silently as the vision faded. "Find me." Luna realized she wasn't dealing with a simple dark matter experiment gone wrong. This was a full-scale multiversal collapse. The cube was feeding on the energy of other universes, and if it wasn't stabilized soon, the entire multiverse could unravel. The fractured realities were more than just echoes of alternate timelines. They seemed to carry their own physical weight. Luna felt a strange tug as she passed through a corridor. Her body momentarily stretched thin, as though caught between gravitational forces from multiple dimensions. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, gasping for breath as the pull subsided. In that brief moment, she had felt a presence, something watching from the other side, lurking between realities. It wasn't just the cube that was feeding off the energy. Something far more sinister was waiting in the rift, using the cracks to reach through. Returning to the cube's chamber, Luna stood before it. The obsidian object pulsed once more, but this time it felt different. The pulse matched her heartbeat, as though the cube was syncing with her. Luna reached out, and as her fingers brushed the surface, she felt a surge of information flood her mind. Data, equations, and theories about the multiverse, dark matter, and quantum physics. In a moment of clarity, she understood. The cube wasn't just an object, it was an entity, a conduit for higher dimensional beings. The energy it was leaking was not accidental, it was communicating, and it was showing her something terrifying. A force hidden within the multiverse, feeding off the collapse of realities. It was something ancient, something that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. The cube pulsed again, sending Luna into a vision. She stood on the edge of an event horizon, watching as entire universes collapsed into singularities. Stars blinked out of existence. Entire planets were consumed by black holes. And through it all, the shadowy figure of an entity moved through the darkness, consuming reality itself. Luna struggled to make sense of the vision, the endless data pouring into her mind at an overwhelming pace. Strings of numbers, formulas beyond her comprehension, and glimpses of places that didn't exist blurred together. But at the center of it all was the cube, its obsidian surface like a void, infinite and unknowable. Then, just for an instant, she saw something within it, shapes moving, shadows within the void. They were watching her. The cube wasn't just a conduit, it was a prison, and the entities inside were beginning to stir. The message was clear. Something far worse was coming, something that could not be contained by any universe. Luna knew she had to act quickly. Every pulse of the cube was growing stronger, and the distortions in space-time were becoming more pronounced. She needed to find the version of herself from the vision, the one who knew how to control the cube. But how could she reach an alternate version of herself? Using the research data left behind by Dr. Laurent's team, Luna began to piece together a plan. The cube's power was linked to the gravitational anomalies in the Convergence, a nexus of dark matter where the fabric of the multiverse was weakest. If she could synchronize her own quantum state with the cube's pulses, she might be able to navigate the fractured realities and find the version of herself who could stop the collapse. But time was running out. The facility was tearing itself apart, with entire sections of the observatory phasing in and out of existence. One moment she was in the control room, the next, she was floating in the cold void of space, watching alternate versions of herself flicker in and out of her vision. As Luna scrambled through the collapsing corridors, she saw the reality around her ripple Windows shifted from showing the vastness of space to glimpses of strange alien landscapes. At one point, the station's interior briefly transformed into a cavernous structure of bone and metal, an architectural impossibility. Gravity itself faltered, and Luna felt her body stretch as though she was being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. She clutched the cube's chamber doorframe as the world solidified again, but the message was clear. The cube was growing impatient, and if Luna didn't act soon, her universe would be consumed in the wake of its hunger. In the cube's chamber, Luna made her move. Synchronizing her heartbeat with the cube's pulses, she felt her consciousness stretch across the multiverse, connecting with the alternate versions of herself. She saw countless realities, some where she had already failed, others where the cube had consumed entire galaxies. But in one reality, she saw the version of herself she needed to find, the Luna holding the cube in the intact observatory. With a final pulse, Luna merged her consciousness with this version of herself, becoming the anchor point for the cube's power. She could feel the energy stabilizing, the fractures in reality beginning to heal. But it wasn't over. The entity lurking in the multiverse had sensed her actions, and it was coming for her. As Luna held the cube, she knew she would not shut it down or destroy it. Instead, she would use its power to stabilize the multiverse, creating a bridge between realities that would allow her to control the flow of energy and keep the entity at bay. In the aftermath, the observatory was silent. The cube was inert, its power contained. But Luna knew the threat wasn't over. Somewhere in the vast multiverse, the entity still lurked, waiting for its chance to strike again. The silence of the observatory was deafening, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Luna felt the weight of infinite realities pressing against her consciousness, a web of connections she had only just begun to grasp. The cube sat still, an enigma that had nearly torn existence apart, but she could feel it in her bones. The fracture was not fully healed. The entity beyond the rift was still out there, waiting for the moment when the cube would weaken again. Luna looked at the dark sky through the fractured window and had a sense that this was not the end.